camera speeds. Alrighty, podcast and YouTube friends, we are doing a night interior breakdown, and the title of this episode is how to fight the flatness. So what I mean by that is many times if you're shooting anything, it could be day interior, day exterior, night interior, night exterior. If you aren't looking at the whole scene in a three-dimensional shape, things can start to look really flat. And in this instance, we're going to be going over a night interior scene for a feature film that I was on this year. And one of the main things is to, how do you fight the flatness, right? And a big part of that is, number one, the location has to be situated in such a way where you can, achieve non-flatness with lighting and through set deck and art direction and things like that. Number two is obviously the blocking, right? You have to know where your people are going to be. But number three is the lights, right? The resources, the fixtures. Do you have enough resources, lights, grip to be able to put things overhead, to be able to put a larger light on a stand, and to be able to flag off, say, a portion of window that you don't need, right? So we're gonna hop into this nighttime exterior, and let me see if I can go full screen on this guy in Resolve. So we have two people that are basically sitting down, and their minds are being synced, right? Is sort of like the idea here. So we have sync here and a sync here, all like VFX and such things like that. Anyway, so right now what you can look at is the foreground does look a little bit underexposed. However, on the day, what we had essentially were a couple things. So we have a Forza 500. I'm also going to leave a page on my website where you can see the JPEG breakdowns where I've listed all this stuff, like where the lights are, what kind of lights we have. We have a Forza 500 with I think we had like a quarter and a double cyan on it as our essentially giving our exterior motivated light source, right? So like sodium vapor, if you like that, if you want to go tungsten, right? I didn't want to go tungsten because we already had tungsten inside. We had these bulbs or practical bulbs that were part of the location that we were at. We have fairy lights, so we already have a lot of tungsten inside. I needed something to separate them out, and so one thing I like is cyan. Not necessarily, teal can work too, but I like cyan because it gives it a little bit something where, like, you have those rickety parking garage neon signs, right, that are sort of like cyan colors. So that's sort of what I'm playing off of is a LA street vibe. Okay, so we have 500 with cyan with the Fresnel and barn doors. That's giving us this. It's giving us a little bit of highlight here on the edge of the windows. So here, edge of the windows. So here, a little reflection here. And then this is bouncing off of the windows, and that's giving us this shape here with the wine glass, right? So that is that for the our main source of kind of how do we create contrast here? How do we fight the flatness, right? Because if you can imagine, if you didn't have any of these highlights, it would just be black. It would just be dark. Rather than being able to salt and pepper the image, rather than being able to go from light to dark and then from light to dark, it would just be black and darkness and very flat. So that's one way how we fight the flatness. This might be a pretty long one, so I might break this up into two parts, like a part one and part two. But anyways, going back to our talent here. Luckily, this wide shot is just used for an establishing shot. It isn't used much throughout the rest of the scene, but on top of that, we have, what else do we have? We have B7Cs in here, as you can tell. So we have aperture B7Cs. I think these were set to like 3000 Kelvin, something like that. I was trying to match them with these practicals here. These practicals, unfortunately, they weren't working with a dimmer. And I also needed, just, again, more highlights in the background to help fight the flatness. So we decided to keep these on, and I did my best to expose for these bulbs. I couldn't control the intensity of them, and I think they were like, you can tell too, they're just on like the edge of clipping. They're like right there, but they're not fully clipped. You can still see some of the actual bulb here, the actual filament, I mean, right? I think we also had a what is it called, the aperture, the little square ones, the MC. Yeah, we had I can't even right with this thing. I need one of those tablet things. I have an MC here. Otherwise, this other fixture art direction piece would just be, not illuminated, right? So how can we fight flatness, right? Again, it's just about creating layers of contrast through exposure or through color. We also have a Titan 2 parked way in the corner here, the far corner, and that's giving us this illumination here, a little bit on the, I think this is the reflection of like a table or something like that, but we also do have a coffee table here. So we're giving a little push here. We're also getting just a little bit of push here. And then we also do have a Titan tube overhead with the grid, and that's mimicking this same like warm color tone, right? We also had a light mat overhead. We also had a light mat on the day, but I felt like the light mat would, like, ideally you do this, right? You have all this stuff set up, right? And then you're like, oh man, this thing still looks under. So one of two things: one, you can use a light, or number two, you can use power windows in the grade, which is what I opted to go for. I think because we just didn't have enough grip on the day or something like that, because I had another baby boom set up on far camera right, because you just have rows of windows. So I had my gaffer, I think we put up an 8x8 of quarter grid to flag off like a half section of the windows to help diffuse the light a little bit. And I think we just ran out of fucking, boom arms and stuff, but ideally you would put something upstage, so we could have put our light mat. We had a light mat +3. We could have put that upstage, and then brought at least some little backlight or some edge light on them. But I decided, let's just save it for the grade, because everything else is ballpark like here. All you have to adjust is essentially the key here, right? Okay, that is our Y. Let's go ahead and come in. So we do a little, I think they did this movie is not out yet, so hopefully I don't get in trouble. They are in the first stage of post-production. But anyways, we're going in for some close-ups here. Okay, so our first close-up. Oh, do we get some focus here? Let me see. I think we were also shooting this on the Red Komodo in 6K and with the Sigma full frame primes, as well as the Cine primes, as well as the 18 to 35. I think I was using some glimmer glass as well, like an eighth of glimmer glass and quarter on some shots. But anyways, a little side segment. If you're looking for some new tracks for your client work, for commercials that you're shooting, could just be for a short film or music video that you're producing, that you're directing, the folks over at Audiio have you covered. From a multitude of genres to being able to search for different tempos and also have a more clean and easily accessible user interface, Audiio has been one of the best platforms I've used in the past few years. I'll leave a link in the description down below for 70% off your first year of Audiio Pro. And again, all the licenses will be there for your projects, for your client work, and everything that you can imagine. So those practical bulbs that we see here, right? Again, how can we fight against the flatness, right? We need little specular highlights, right? And I'm like at a T2 here. I might even be wide open at like a 1.5. I feel like I'm at a 2 here. I don't feel like I was at a 1.5 on the Sigmas, right? But we need highlights. We need some layer of depth, right? Now, on top of that, as you can see, that Forza, we just parked camera left now. Those hints of cyan are giving us edge on the rail, a little hair light here, right? So again, how can we create depth? How can we create as much nuance as possible? And then to camera left, this is where we bring in the light mat, right? We have the light mat +3, I think with like the full grid on it. And then we also have a 4x4 frame, just to soften up even more. We have a 4x4 frame of like either magic cloth or half grid. I know we had all three on the day. We had quarter, half, and magic cloth. This kind of looks like half grid, but it probably could be magic cloth, right? Because that's what you can tell. Our eye lights are right here, our big old eye lights, right? And then no neg, which is odd for me to not use any neg, but it's just so dark anyways that we had enough control over all of our lights where I didn't necessarily need to flag off any more lights, right? I think the last thing we had too is we had our Titan tube overhead as just like kind of pushing in the warmth from these bulbs, because it honestly wouldn't get too far. You might get a little bit on the shoulder, which is right here. But our tiny tube is helping to just give us like a nice little edge here. All right. And this setup is essentially, sort of the same once we move into the reverse. It's a little soft, but shout out to my first AC and focus puller, Sean Murphy. He did an incredible job on this. Also to my my gaffer and key grip, my gaffer Tristan, and my KG Ryan. So these guys are fucking fantastic. I love working with them. Again, it's sort of going back to like, if you don't have a good location or decent location, if you aren't working within the means of blocking to be able to create shape, right? Like, again, not to say you can't do the Wes Anderson center frame thing. I've worked with directors who like that. And so it is what it is. But in this situation, when you're shooting a dynamic scene between two people, it's like, how can we best achieve the best lighting possible and also the best looking frame, right? And not just things that are kind of like flat, right? Now, I think one thing to bring to note is, say if we didn't have any of these highlights here, right? This would look extremely flat because it would just look dark, right? And I think I'm going to do another breakdown like in January of a nighttime exterior shoot commercial that we did, where I'll show you an example of like, we can't do anything, right? As far as lighting up the background because of the location we're at and the budget that we had. So things to sort of consider. All right. Let's move on. Because essentially, again, we just flip the lighting setup, right? We're not doing anything different, right? Again, edge light, right? Hair light, edge light, key light. Make sure you got some highlights here. Okay, boom, done. I guess the last thing to talk about, because we talked about fighting the flatness, which hopefully you guys get the idea of how to fight the flatness, right? Light, foreground, midground, background. Exposure differences, color differences. Even if you don't have the lights available, maybe it's an art direction thing. Do you have like yellow walls? Do you have blue walls? Do you have gray walls, brown cabinets, whatever it is, right? That can also help create contrast in the realm of color and be able to fight the flatness, right? I think the last thing I would say is, man, I guess, if anything, just know your sensor. I chose to shoot on the Komodo because the Komodo does really well when it comes to the toe of the image, right? Your like 5 IRE, 10, 15 IRE, it does really well there, where it'll hold the shadow information. It may look clipped or whatever on your histogram, but when you bring it into Resolve, you have like a good 1 to 2 stops of bringing information back without there being any noise. Now, where it suffers, the Komodo specifically, is in the highlight retention. Once you get to like 70 IRE, your highlights are gone. So you have to really protect the highlights, which is why that sensor is pretty interesting, because you think like, oh man, well, if I protect the highlights, if you're day exterior, day interior, you're like, oh, my shadows are crushed, I'm not going to have any information. But again, that's where the sensor shines, is it'll hold that shadow information. Other cameras, such as like my FX9, it'll hold highlight information really well. You can be like 85, 90 IRE, and you could easily pull a stop back in the highlights. I've done it multiple times. In the shadows where things get really noisy, so if you try to bring something back, even like a half a stop that's underexposed, you're going to get noise. So, food for thought. All right, friends, that is it for this, probably just one episode, right? Are we going for one? Maybe 2 parts. We'll see. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, if you liked it, please rate it on iTunes podcast. I'd appreciate it. Please subscribe to my podcast and also the YouTube channel as well, just so you are notified of new content coming out, new episodes coming out. And other than that, I will catch you guys in the next podcast episode and probably video.
Hitting your post there. Probably need even brighter. You can go ahead. Just have to like inch it around. Yeah. I'm gonna need some reference at monitor to know when I'm actually